let's say this is the baby. Okay, this is his head. This is his feet. I felt like he was halfway out, like shoulders and everything was out and just hanging there, like lifeless. And she's like, wait for another contraction. I'm like, bullshit. Just got an epidural. Now they're doing a Foley balloon catheter. Hello everybody, my name is Blaine Elizabeth and welcome back to my channel. It has been at least 3 weeks since you have seen my face in a long form content video, probably longer than that because guess what? I am no longer pregnant. I had baby James on St. Patrick's Day. I'm going to be sharing my birth story with you guys. Not expecting to give birth on St. Patrick's Day. My due date was actually March 30th, which was just a couple of days ago. So I went in to my OB doctor for my non-stress test. They were finding his heart rate on the monitor and it was like 180 to 200. Now let me preface this with saying a baby's normal heart rate is between 110 and 160. If it's consistently like at 110 or stays at 160, they'd be a little bit worried. But if it's higher than that, it's a cause for concern. So James's heart rate was between 180 and 200 and it wasn't going down. So the nurse looks at me and she's like, I'm gonna go get Jana. And I was like, okay, she's my midwife. So she goes and gets Jana. Jana comes in and Jana's like, yeah, we're gonna send you for an ultrasound. So they send me to the ultrasound. The ultrasound lady sets me down, jelly, measures the fluid, looks at baby's heart rate, looks at baby's heart rate some more, enlarges it, makes sure she sees what she's seeing is correct and goes, yeah, I'm gonna go get Jana. And I was like, okay, you guys are freaking me out. Like, can I just go to the hospital, please? Because Jana, I don't know. I'm just ready to go have this baby if that's what needs to happen. Also, I was 38 weeks on the day. So they were going to strip my membranes that day if that's what I wanted. But that didn't happen because after Jana came in, I was crying and panicking by this point. And I'm like, can I just go to the hospital, please? God, why is this eyebrow always darker? They're sisters, not twins. They're sisters, not twins. Okay. Sorry, sidetracked. I'm crying. I'm like, Jana, can I please just go to the hospital? She's like, she's so calm and just chill. She's like, yep, we are going to send you to the hospital. It's not an emergency, so you can just drive yourself. Mind you, my OB doctor and the hospital, very close, like not even a mile down the road. It's like, if it was an emergency, you know, we would have an ambulance or whatever, but it's not, so you can just drive yourself there. So I get in my car, I'm like trying to pull myself together. I call Chris. Mind you, the night before, March 15th, I went to the hospital. We got our dogs to our dog sitters. We had all of our baby stuff packed up, ready to go, because I thought I was having contractions. If you hear my baby in the background, he's back there. And they were like, nope, you're not having contractions. Baby's heart rate was fine the day before, and we were all prepared to have a baby. This day, the next day, I go to my OB appointment thinking I'm gonna get my membrane stripped and maybe labor will hopefully start later that night. But they're like, nope, go to the hospital. So I get to the hospital, I'm calling Chris, I'm like, baby's heart rate is high, not an emergency. If you want, I can just call you and let you know what they say. He's like, nope, I'm on my way. So he lets the dogs out and gets to the hospital within 15 minutes, but we live 30 minutes away, so I don't know how we performed that miracle. But he also got a new truck and he's like been super excited to like have a rush to the hospital moment. So he got his rushing to the hospital moment. So by the time he gets there, the ultrasound people come in. Her name's Dr. Parisi. She was super, super cool. She comes in and she does the ultrasound. She's like, yep, baby's heart rate is high. We're going to rule out a couple things. Mom, have you had a fever? Have you had any health issues? I was like, I had walking pneumonia and a double ear infection like the week before. I just finished my antibiotics, but I'm feeling fine now. So they came in and drew my labs, making sure I didn't have like elevated white blood cells, because maybe I had a fever or an infection that I didn't know about, and that could cause baby's heart rate to be high. Nope, my labs came back fine. They came back in, tested his heart again. Actually, they had me on the monitor the whole time. So they came back in and looked, and they're like, okay, so we don't have a good reason why baby's heart rate is so high. So we are gonna go ahead and induce you today. I know you've never had a C-section before, but if baby can't handle the induction process, we're gonna have to take him via C-section. And I was just like very panicked about that, because I have had both of my children vaginally, naturally, and I did not want a C-section. First of all, I'm a person in recovery, so I didn't want like extra substances in my body. Second of all, just surgery, being awake while they're like cutting me out, it just freaks me out. I'm the type of person, I want to know every single thing that they're doing. I want you to walk me through the steps, but I want to hyper fucking focus on it. And I don't know why I'm like that. I get nervous, that's why. So I was like, God, please. I'm texting all my cousins that I know have had C-sections, and I'm like, they're talking about a C-section. It's freaking me out, blah, blah, blah. So the doctor comes in and she's like, okay, we have a plan. So we're going to start you on Pitocin without ripening your cervix, because we want to know if the baby can handle contractions. So we're just going to start Pitocin right away. We want to see 5 contractions in a 10-minute period. And if baby can handle that, it's fine. Well, guess what? Baby's heart rate goes back to normal. He handles the contractions just fine. In fact, his heart rate goes back to normal for like the next 5 hours. And then me and Chris are all excited because we're like, yay, baby's doing fine. He's doing much better. And we get to meet him. Like, it's happening. He's coming. Still had me NPO, which is like no drinks, only clear liquid diet. But he snuck me a little bit of coffee, I think. And they let me have like an ice cream or a sherbet. So they also asked me to take out my nose ring, which I still haven't put back in because it's a bitch for me to put in myself. And just in case I had to be taken for a C-section. So then we're laying down. All of a sudden, all the doctors rush in and are staring at the freaking monitor. And I'm like, oh no, is baby's heart rate doing the thing again? They're like, yep, it jumped back up. We're still gonna go through with the induction. You know, he handled it just fine. So what they started to do after the Pitocin and I had those 5 contractions in a 10-minute period. I had to take off my sweater because I was very, very hot. Tamales. Where was I? Pitocin. He handled the 5 contractions in 10 minutes or whatever he had to do. He passed the test. I don't remember exactly what the test was, but he passed it. Next step in the induction was starting me on Cytotec. And that is, it ripens the cervix so that the cervix can dilate. They started me on oral Cytotec. And then they also started me on a balloon catheter. It was called a Cook catheter. So what they do is they put a balloon thing inside your cervix and then one on the outside. And they fill them with saline, 2 of them. And they squish on your cervix. So it basically mimics the baby's head, and then also push on it from this way. So your cervix is forcing to dilate. But what I forgot to tell you is the doctor talked to me about it first. And she's like, so I know that you had the Foley catheter with Harrison. We're going to do it again, but we're going to do the other one, the Cook catheter, where it pushes from both sides. Because the Foley only pushes from the top. And I was like, yeah, with Harrison, that was rough. I think I asked for pain medication, like, while that was happening, because it was rough. And she's like, well, I have an idea. Let's start your epidural before we do that, so that you're not, like, in super bad pain. Like, I don't like to torture my mamas too hard. And I was like, that sounds amazing. However, I'm scared as fuck of epidurals. I don't know why. Again, with the C-section, like, it's an invasive procedure, right? And with an invasive procedure, I want to be knocked out. I don't want to know what's going on. I want to be oblivious. and that's because I am a ultra hyper focuser. I want to focus exactly on what they're doing back there and like know the minute that they're done so I can relax. So I'm hunched over, mind you, my belly's super big. I'm hunched over, I'm holding Chris's hands for this epidural. They're like putting tape on my back, they're mapping out whatever, feeling my, I hate thinking about it. Feeling all around in my spine. Of course, there's a resident lady there and then an attending anesthesiologist. I'm hunched over. They're like, okay, we're gonna feel a poke. We're gonna numb, I can't even talk about it. We're gonna numb the area. So then they numb the area. That part isn't bad. The part that is bad, is when they're like threading the catheter into your spine, because it's like you can feel something feels funny. Like it doesn't hurt. Obviously, I have trauma, right? Because I'm just freaking out just talking about it, trying to remember the feeling to tell you. And it's like, you can tell someone's fucking around with your spine. That's the best way I can describe it. And it feels not natural. I'd said that there was some pressure on my left side. I remember I said that. And then I started blacking out. My vision started going like from the outside coming in like black. The nurse called the like charge nurse. She's like, Jacinda, come in here, please. Next thing I know, Jacinda's holding my shoulders and I'm like, I'm blacking out. You're losing me. I'm gonna pass out right now. Like I'm verbally talking her through me passing out. So there, and I go, pull it out. I'm done getting this epidural. Like take it out of my back now, please. So they lay me down so that I can like stop blacking out. And I come to, and I was like, take that fucking thing out of my back. And they're like, it's done. We just have to tape it up or whatever. And I was like, oh, okay. I was like, did you put the medicine in there? I can still move my legs. My legs are still functioning. They're like, no, we did not put the medicine in. I was like, okay, that's the part I'm scared of. I don't know why, because I don't know. You have to sign all these consent forms to get an epidural. Like, oh, you might get paralyzed. Oh, we might actually kill you. Oh, you know, all these risks are involved with an epidural. So I'm just like so scared, thinking, yep, I'm dying. When I started blacking out, I'm like, they fucked up and now I'm dying and I'm becoming paralyzed. I don't know why I always catastrophize. I'm like, I'm going to be the 0.01% person that passes away from an epidural. It was fine. And then they put the medicine in and I felt it mostly on my left leg. So I could not lift my left leg. I could lift my right. And then progressing to the further in the night, I could feel all my contractions on my right side. I got the epidural in. That's doing good. You also have to lay like on your back, which is so weird because your entire pregnancy, they tell you not to sleep on your back. Don't sleep on your back. Don't sleep on your stomach. And now in the hospital, you have to lay on your back and like, there's no like lumbar support. So your back's like arched a little bit and it's just so uncomfortable. And I had to lay in that position for like 36 hours. I hated it. And I kept wanting to turn to my side, but you can't turn to your side after an epidural because all the medicine could go to one side. I'm like, excuse me, I only feel the medicine in my left side. So wouldn't it be good if it went to my right side? Anyways, so then the contractions started getting stronger. That balloon Foley Cook catheter thing came out. So that means my cervix was dilated. They came in and they broke my water. Baby's heart rate went back to normal. Went back to normal for like another 5 hours. Then what do you know? Middle of the night, all the doctors and nurses rush back in there. His heart rate's doing funny things again. So they decide they're going to screw a monitor into the top of his head since my water was broken. And they are going to monitor his heart rate through the top of his head. Okay. Pretty sure they did that with Harrison too, but that was 8 years ago, so I can't really remember. So what the doctor figured out was that he had a heart arrhythmia, she thinks. So one side of his heart was beating at 180 and the other side was beating at 145. And she said that the baby's heart beats like in reverse. And then once they take their first breath, it like pumps this way, if that makes sense. I don't know. it made sense when she described it. And she said babies with heart arrhythmia, she's like 90% of them, as soon as they take their first breath, it equals itself out and it fixes itself. And I was like, okay, good. She's like, but we're gonna have NICU doctor come and talk to you just for precautionary measures so we can talk to you about the risks and stuff with the heart arrhythmia. We're like, okay. And I'm telling Chris, I'm like, deep down in my heart, babe, I know there's nothing wrong with this baby. I don't know why his heart is acting funny, but I can just feel it in my bones that like he's gonna be okay and we're gonna take him home and everything's gonna be fine. The doctor comes in, the NICU doctor, and he's like, hi, nice to meet you, blah, blah, blah. And then he looks at my doctor, he's like, what do you want me to say to them? She's like, oh, well, I just wanted, like, he was very not good bedside manner. And the nurses are like, I would trust Dr. Martin with my life. Like, he is the best NICU doctor ever, blah, blah, blah. And he's just like, what do you want me to say? And she's like, oh, I just wanted you to talk to them about it. Oh, they're like, well, he's going to the NICU. We're just going to make sure that everything's fine. We're doing echo on his heart, precautionary measures. And I'm like, I don't want my baby going to the NICU. I'm like, so you're not even going to give him a chance, like, to see if it fixes? And I was pissed because I knew that A, now his pediatrician wouldn't be able to come, and B, now he's going to have to hit all these milestones with his bilirubin and his feeding, and he's going to have to hit all these other milestones before he's able to come home, and I'm just irritated about it. And neither of my other two children had to go to the NICU, so I wasn't used to that experience. And it was a shitty experience, I will tell you. So we meet Dr. Martin. He's like, yep, your baby's going to the NICU. We're going to have NICU present at your birth. And I was like, okay, I guess, whatever. Nothing I can say at that point, you know. So then my contractions keep getting stronger. I can tell that the pressure, I feel a lot of pressure on my cervix. And like I said, my right side was not numb. So I could feel all these contractions on my right side. At one time I was on my hands and knees like this. But mind you, my left leg was, I couldn't feel my left from my waist down on my left side. So I'm like trying to hold my balance like this on this yoga ball. I'm crying, I'm snotting, I'm blowing my nose so that I can continue to breathe through these contractions. And then the Pitocin does something really weird to your body. So the Pitocin, after you have a contraction, you're like, you know, you're crying and yelling through that. Then when the contraction goes away, you go, like my jaw was like shattering, shivering, one of those words. I was like, am I septic? Am I having a fever? Like, is this maybe why my baby's heart rate is high? They're like, no, that's completely normal. That's just the hormones. I was like, well, I don't remember this, and I was induced for my last two, but this shivering, chittering, shavering shit is weird to me. Shivering, chittering, shattering, chattering. I don't know. Okay. So then, of course, it's like 7 o'clock at night on St. Patrick's Day, and there's a shift change with the nurses, which really sucked because I really liked Jacinda and Aletta. They were my favorite nurses. So then we get a new nurse, and I'm like, I don't trust you yet, you know? And she's like, honey, I really think that you need to ask for the bolus, which is like an extra dose of your epidural medication. Because like I was going through it. I couldn't breathe out of my nose. I was like crying and yelling and contracting a lot. My pain was 10 out of 10 for sure. I was like, no, my body needs to feel this pain to change, to go from like the dilation, because I was only like a 6 at the time. These new nurses, my contractions were going hard as heck. And they were like, girl, you should ask for more medicine. Also, I had like this button, epidural, so I could push the button to get like an extra dose or whatever of medicine. But that didn't do shit. I didn't feel any relief from that button, I'll tell you that. So I was like, finally, it's like, yeah, okay, tell that guy to come in and give me the bolus. But my epidural was traumatic. I didn't like the messing with my back, which is why I postponed it for so long. Little did I know, it was just like an IV thing. So they just had to push it in the IV and it automatically went in. So they didn't really have to do anything with my back, which I was grateful for. So this time I'm not on my hands and knees anymore. I'm back to lying on my back, chattering my teeth. And then the next contraction comes and I'm like, oh, that was so much better. And the bolus IV epidural, it felt cold. Like it didn't feel like euphoria or like any type of like drug, because I'm a drug addict, right? So I pay attention. It wasn't like, yeah, like euphoric. It was just like cold. And then I just noticed my next contraction wasn't as painful. And then my next one was a lot less painful. And I was like, oh, okay, I can handle this. I just feel the pressure. I don't feel as much pain, like, ow. And then the nurse, Jessica was her name. She's like, I think you should put your leg up, like over here. That's really helped a lot of women progress. And she also said that my body needed to be able to relax to progress. So she put my leg up. I got the bolus, so the contractions weren't as bad. And I went from a 6 to a 10 within like 20 minutes. And like they checked me. They're like, you're at an 8. And they came in. I'm like, you need to check me again because this baby's coming. And they're like, you're at a 9.5 still. And I'm like, well, the pressure, I can feel it rectally, which is how you know the baby's coming. Like it feels like it's more and more towards your butt, basically, like your rectum, like you're gonna poop. I was like, this baby is coming. I can feel it rectally. And she's like, okay, well, your cervix needs to dilate like 1/2 inch or whatever. So she was like pushing my cervix around the baby's head to let him come down. And I was like, well, I'm gonna like start pushing, like it's just gonna start happening. So as soon as I started pushing, the baby, or the doctors was in there. And then she's like, okay, you can do a push. We're gonna count it down 1, 2, 3. She's like, put your chin to your chest, put your hands behind your legs. Mind you, my left leg I can't feel. It's numb, so it's hard to like hold this leg. Finally, I think Chris held this leg and Sarah held that leg. I think. That's what they want you to do. And so I pushed, and then I felt like, okay, let's say this is the baby. Okay, this is his head, this is his feet. I felt like he was halfway out, like shoulders and everything was out and just hanging there, like lifeless. And she's like, wait for another contraction. I'm like, bullshit. I'm not letting this lifeless baby hang halfway dead out of me. I'm pushing him out. So I pushed the rest of him out. He was out within like 2 minutes. 2 contractions, I think they said. And yeah, that's my birth story. And then they laid him on me and I was going, there was no tears because it's like, you're so out of breath. You're just trying to like catch your breath, but also feel this wonderful, lovely moment of joy. This is very weird. Also, I know NICU's taking him, so like I just want him to stay with me. It was very emotional. Thank you so much for sticking around and giving my birth story a listen. I might add on to this later tonight, but I'm definitely going to do a part 2 of our NICU story and journey because I got a lot to get off my chest with that one. Now that I'm no longer like super hormonal and I can talk about it without like crying and sobbing, I feel more comfortable to talk about it. So, all right. Thank you.